But also one mistake that a lot of candidates do is that they don't listen to the story while they're revising their own story. The next question was, do you know about G7? Like, are you aware about it? I said, I am aware, but not really. I haven't read about it since a long time. And then the next question was, why is G7 called G7 and not G8?
Okay.
And then there were tricky questions on, how will you calculate the diameter of the park that you run in? And the answer was in roots. So I told him the answer was in root and then fraction. And then he said, what is this? How can you do this? Can't you tell me in decimals? You're very slow. How come you have such good marks? So he just tried to build that pressure a lot. And I was asked such questions which do not have answers. Like, why is the mud brown? Why is the light from the tube light white? And why is the light emitted from a bulb yellow? And why is the Arabian Sea called Sea and Bay of Bengal called Bay? And I just don't know how tricky questions these were. And then he suddenly started asking about where is Suez Canal. So you're not in that zone, you're thinking about logical questions, and then he moves on to geography. And then he moved on to defense knowledge. He's asking me about naval utility aircraft.
Hello friends, welcome back to Defense Roger and I hope you're doing good. My name is Sheetal Yadav and जो आज की हमारी गेस्ट है उनका नाम नव्या है. वो 3 बार SSB गए हैं और तीनों बार उनको रिकमेंडेशन मिला है. उनको जो पहला रिकमेंडेशन मिला था वो 19 SSB इलाहाबाद से मिला फॉर इंडियन आर्मी एंड बाकी के दोनों रिकमेंडेशन इंडियन नेवी के लिए मिले हैं फॉर नेवी टेक एंड नेवी IT. तीनों जो SSB हैं वो डायरेक्ट एंट्री के थ्रू वो गए थे एंड जहाँ पे कंपटीशन काफ़ी ज़्यादा होता है और वैकेंसीज फीमेल कैंडिडेट के लिए काफ़ी कम होती है, तो उस इंटरव्यू के एक्सपीरियंस से आपको काफ़ी कुछ सीखने को मिलेगा. एंड स्पेशली जो उनका पर्सनल इंटरव्यू है वो 2 घंटे का चला, 1.5 घंटे इस तरह की लेंथ थी. तो काफ़ी इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चंस पूछे गए, काफ़ी ट्रिकी क्वेश्चंस थे, काफ़ी सिचुएशन दी गई, काफ़ी टेक्निकल क्वेश्चंस भी थे. तो इस इंटरव्यू से काफ़ी कुछ सीखेंगे हम. सो विदाउट एनी फर्दर डिले लेट्स कॉल नव्या टू आवर प्लेटफॉर्म डिफेंस रॉजर. So Navya, for this interview, I'm very much excited. There is a reason that आपका जो स्टोरी टेलिंग का तरीका है, I'm sure audience will be fond of it. And secondly, 3 बार SSB गए हो आप और तीनों बार रिकमेंडेशन मिला है. So आपकी जो जर्नी है हम उस पूरे से इंटरव्यू में कवर करेंगे फॉर श्योर कि किस तरह के चैलेंजेस आए और how was your journey in a wholesome way. But I was just curious कि आप एक सिविलियन बैकग्राउंड से हो and then you chose a career as भी आर्म फोर्सेस को एज अ करियर चूज किया है. सो आई एम एक्सपेक्टिंग अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग रीजन. तो आपका मोटिवेशन फैक्टर क्या था?
All right. Hi, ma'am. Thank you for having me here. Starting with the motivation, I think that was the real motivation was when I watched this documentary called The Breaking Point. So it's basically based on Indian paratroopers and Indian submariners.
Okay.
So, by the end of the documentary, I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I was not able to sleep for 2 days. And I was like, I want my life to have this meaning.
Okay.
And also that, I tried and searched, I talked to people, but I had literally nobody in my immediate or extended family who was serving in the defense forces. So I got all the more a reason to become, the first female officer from my family to contribute. So I think that was a very big motivation for me.
And people who are watching it, I would just let them know कि जब प्रिपरेशन फेस कर रहे थे that there were a lot of blunder, हो जाता है प्रिपरेशन में, समझ नहीं आता है. And I just want to know कि आपका जो प्री SSB फेज था वो कैसा गया, because when you went to the SSB you just did wonders. So how was your pre SSB phase?
Okay, so like any civilian student, I was literally unaware of what the PPDT is about, what is psych, and what are the GTO tasks. So I was literally not aware of them. But so my journey to preparation for SSB started when I joined LWS. So there, I think I was introduced as to how PPDT is to be done. How do you conduct yourself in SSB? So I did like a lot of blunders, like several of them. I was, so I remember this one instant where I wrote a story in which, a person was there, he had a knife in his hand. So it was basically a tricky story that, sir gave us. And I actually made it around murder. So I thought that we need to be creative. But
Right.
I think that was not the creativity that was needed. So, and I think he kept poking me for 3 days that, you will do murders and what is this? Why are you going to SSB? And he kept poking me for days.
Okay.
So I believe that it started from there to getting recommended in my first attempt. It has been like a very wholesome journey, a very challenging one as well.
So नव्या, आपने मेंशन किया LWS के बारे में. So जनरली एस्पिरेंट्स बोलते हैं कि मैम आप कभी एकेडमिक्स के ऊपर डिस्कशन नहीं करते हो और आप फीडबैक नहीं लेते हो. So you went to LWS. Would you recommend somebody who is preparing and who are seeking for some guidance and everything?
I would definitely like I'll close my eyes and say okay, go to LWS.
Okay.
So because I know that it was not just like before my first attempt that I went there. I
Mhm.
went there like only even for a day. I used to be like I have to go to that place to get recommended. So
Okay.
it then became a ritual that even if I go for one day, I'll stay there and be in touch with the teachers there, with the students there, and then I get into the zone that okay, karna hai.
Mhm.
So I believe LWS is like my go-to place before I go to any SSB.
Okay. And I'm just curious to know that how was your journey? तो हम हर चीज के बारे में डेफिनेटली डिटेल में डिस्कशन करेंगे बट बिफोर वी गो टू द एक्चुअल एसएसपी हाउ वाज योर स्क्रीनिंग प्रोसेस स्क्रीनिंग प्रोसेस के अंदर भी काफी सारे चैलेंजेस आते हैं और तीनों बार गए हो तो आपने स्क्रीनिंग को अच्छे से देखा है ऑब्जर्व किया है और वहां पे काफी सारे कैंडिडेट्स ना स्क्रीन आउट भी हो जाते हैं सो व्हाट वुड बी योर की सजेशंस टू द एस्पिरेंट जो कि एसएसबी के लिए प्रिपेयर कर रहे हैं और मे बी दे आर गोइंग फॉर योर फर्स्ट एसएसबी राइट
Okay. So as we have seen the trend in technical entries, I think getting screened in is the most difficult part because it's a technical entry. A lot of people come, they report, like the reporting is in around like 200s a lot of times. So I think getting screened in is the major part, and I've always focused majorly कि first day निकल जाए तो आगे का निकल जाएगा. So that was like mainly कि OIR needs to be very well, and because there is no negative marking. So attempting it is, I think, the primary step. At least attempt whatever you know, and even if you don't know, just attempt it. And secondly, PPDT में, I remember like I was so well practiced. I was like इतना वो story के बाद इतना सर ने बोल दिया था कि ऐसा नहीं करना, ऐसा नहीं करना, कि खुद से पता लगा कि क्या करना है PPDT में. तो while practicing, I was practicing कि मैं group conclusion दूं. I was not just practicing कि मैं बस एक अच्छी PPDT story लिखूं. I was trying every time when we had mock PPDT sessions that I was the one giving group conclusions. Even if nobody nominated me, I nominated myself. Okay, that I will give the group conclusion. I was just practicing that in the main SSB also I want to be that person who can control the group and then deliver everybody's agreed story. And that happened in my actual SSB also. So I believe that doing that in practice, just implementing it in on the day, I believe that was something I did. But also one mistake that a lot of candidates do is that they don't listen to the story while they're revising their own story.
Okay.
All right. So this happened with me in my first attempt that I was so well versed and I had like 3-4 stories in my mind, and I wrote the story, PPTT story, in 3 minutes. And I kept my pen and I was like sitting idle for 1 minute. And the assessor who was standing there, he just saw me and said, "Are you done?" I was like, "Yes, sir." So I think that created a very good impact on him. Apart from that, it was beneficial for me because I started revising in that 1 minute. And by the time I was there in the PPT discussion, I was, I just knew what I had to say and I was listening to everybody else.
Okay.
So everybody who was before me, I knew everybody's story and what points they had. So I think that was, one point that, played in my favor. And one of the candidates nominated me. Like out of every 20 people sitting, I was nominated to give the group conclusion. So I think screening is one thing that is totally dependent on us and how we perform, how well prepared we are. And I think that's the most important step in SSB.
I also believe the same, Navya, because it is a very vague process for sure. और यहाँ पे आपकी छोटी सी मिस्टेक की वजह से भी आप स्क्रीन आउट हो सकते हो. And I feel कि बाकी सब चीजों से ज्यादा आपको स्क्रीनिंग की प्रैक्टिस करनी चाहिए because you will not get to stay there for 4 days, right? Moving to the stage 2 testing, what about psychological test? Because that consists of TAT, WAT, SRT, ST. तो यहाँ पे क्या है कि कुछ चीजें हम पहले से प्रैक्टिस कर सकते हैं पर कुछ चीजों के लिए हमें ऑन द स्पॉट जो हमारा जो ब्रेन है ना काफी तरह से अच्छे से एक्टिव होना चाहिए सो दैट वी परफॉर्म गुड एट दैट टाइम सो हाउ वाज योर साइकोलॉजिकल टेस्ट
So psychological test is something that I do very freely. Like I am not stressed in the moment because I know it's not just 1 hour. It's like 2-3 hours in which we need to think and we need to think on our feet and be spontaneous. So I believe I did take a lot of stress during my preparation period. And I remember in one of my dossiers, I left like 3 stories incomplete and I could not attempt all of the WATs because I kept thinking, I was confused within like two ideas, like should I go this way or that way? What was the story? So I was not thinking spontaneously. I was making up stories. While that is something which is not required, right? You need to write whatever comes to your mind first.
बिल्कुल.
And I think that is the whole purpose of, the whole site being conducted in one go. Because we need to think who we actually are and what we will be in the situation, of the story. So, and I remember this one instance where Colonel Aditya sir, he was checking my dossier in front of me, and he kept striking off, he kept encircling all the wrong things. And towards the end, I was just standing, beside him. And towards the end, he said, I could, reject this dossier not just once, but thrice.
Oh my God.
And that broke me like anything. And I started crying, and I was like, I really need to do this. I was, taking it very lightly. ठीक है, stories ही तो है, हो जाएगा. But no, it is actually something that can make or break your SSB.
Right.
And I believe that the harsh, feedbacks from them, the actual, genuine feedbacks from them, let me, make it or clear the psych test. And I believe that is something that is very, very crucial. Because it has 12 stories, right? So you can't just, do good in one story, two story. You need to be consistent throughout.
Right.
Also, blank story is something which we can prepare well in advance. And that actually has a very good impact on the dossier.
Right.
Also, negative words in the WAT is something that comes every time.
Right.
And people do get confused, and they do write, wrong sentences, something which is not acceptable. They do write it sometimes.
Right.
So I believe practicing negative words is even important than practicing the positive words or like neutral words.
Makes sense.
Also talking about SRTs, in my mock psych test, I could do only, I think, 29-30 SRTs. And I was like, if there are 30 minutes for some test, then there has to be somebody who does all 60, right? So I was of the thinking कि 30 minutes मिले हैं, उसमें 60 करने ही है. So I could not do it in my first attempt, not in my second attempt, but in my third attempt, which I appeared for recently, I did all 60 SRTs, and that was the goal I had inside. Okay. That is something I needed to improve, and I did it in my third.
नव्या, आपने एसआरटी के बारे में बात करी, तो जनरली गर्ल्स की एसआरटी जो आती है, मैंने नोटिस किया कि दे गिव द सिमिलर काइंड ऑफ सिचुएशन. तो आपने उनको कैसे हैंडल किया?
Okay, so for girls, like you said, I really agree with it. Because most of them are saying that the girl needs to either explain herself or make someone understand or contemplate. So I think the word play there, I think worked for me. That using different synonyms for the same word, because we know we are writing almost the sentence of the same meaning, but I think using different words or improving the formation of the sentence. So I think that worked for me.
Okay. And what about SD? SD तो ऐसी चीज है जो हम पहले से प्रिपेयर कर सकते हैं, और वहां पे जो क्वेश्चंस हमें पहले से पता है कि चीजें कैसे होनी चाहिए, तो आपने SD को प्रिसाइजली प्रिपेयर कैसे किया?
Okay, so SD is like the easiest thing in psych, but it can also be the toughest if you're not prepared. Because उस 15 minute में you can't think everything that you have to write. But SD was something I was well prepared with. I got it checked from Colonel Aditya sir, and he verified. He told me some of the corrections that had to be done. So I believe, and I also, I've seen, candidates who write such huge things, such promising things in their SDs, which I don't think are required. Okay, you can, so we can be very moderate, not be too, boasting about ourselves or writing bad things. I think that having a moderate SD is something which worked for me.
Right. Like you said, the candidates are writing extremes. So किस तरह की उन्होंने लिखा था? I mean, what to avoid?
I mean, they're writing that I'm, they're blessed with such a good daughter, and best daughter ever, and like they're writing things, and they're also writing that my parents need me to improve on my procrastination. And because I get it that we do need to mention sometimes, the assessor says that write something, a bad quality also about yourself.
Right.
But something like procrastination is not acceptable, right, when you're going for the forces. So I believe framing our sentences well and seeing as how the structure of the paragraph is, is basically something that really needs to be checked before writing.
Okay. Navya, now coming to my favorite part, interview. Interview में आपसे इतने interesting questions पूछे गए हैं, whether it's your mock interview, whether it's your free time when you went for the interview, and 2-2 घंटे interview चले हैं. Please share your interview journey. I'm sure उस interview से काफी लोगों को काफी कुछ सीखने को मिलेगा. And I'm also very sure that जिस तरह के आपके responses हैं, they will get to see कि how to handle pressurizing situations. So please share your interview journey.
Okay, so interviews, like in all of the 3 attempts that I've had, interview has been the most interesting part. And I think I had like very distinguished interview from rest of the candidates who were screened in. I don't know how every time that happened. And it started like on a very fine note, but it just happened to go increasingly very tough there. And like the interviewing officer actually like kept grilling me till the end, and he was like, he just wanted to find that one thing that was not right. Okay, he just wanted to find that something that I will say wrong.
Okay.
So I think I was prepared for that, and I think Vikas sir and Daman sir collectively, in LWS where I went for the coaching, I think they literally assessed as what was missing in my personality, and he saw that one negative trait in me, that I do react and I have facial expression aa jate kai bar when you're hurt, kai bar when you listen to something which is not in your favor. Right. So he saw that in me, and then he kept pushing me towards it, and then I consciously improved on it. So in the interview also, I was like, in the mock interview I had in LWS, I was asked about that, if you're the only female officer in a party, and after a party one of your teammates, he gets drunk, and then he comes to your room and starts doing something which is not favorable, right? So he starts doing something insensibly. And I did not know, I was not expecting such. I was of the fact कि ठीक है, PI क्यों होता है, CI क्यों होता है, basic family questions होंगे, but this was the question I was asked. So I reacted in a way that sir, I will talk to him sensible, talk to him, make him understand. And then his counter question was, he's not in his senses, now what will you do? So then I said that, I will defend myself in a way that none of us is harmed, right? So no damage should be there on both ends. And I'll push him like, out of the room, and maybe talk to him next day when he's in his senses. But even if the thing is not resolved, then I'll go to some seniors, seek advice, etc. And then I asked him at the end of the interview, was that fine? And then he said, yes, this is the approach we need, that if something is not getting resolved by talking, then you need to take action. Right. So I think he kind of prepared me for that. But in my first attempt in the actual SSB interview, it was way above, like the level of toughness was way above this. And so it started with like, he asked me about my father's business, and I said how I helped him and everything. So just to see how I react, he said, how can a 20-year-old girl help somebody who is running a business for 30 years? And how can you help him? You don't have any knowledge about the business. And so he has like something related to tires, right? And then he asked me, okay, name 20 tire companies. And I was like, is this a kind of question that can be asked in interviews? I was not ready for it. So I recollected and I said 4 tire companies, which I was aware of. And then just to demoralize me a little more, he said, only because I drive a car, I know 20 tire companies. I don't expect this kind of awareness from you. And I just don't know what all he said. And I was like, so I think this one thing of being polite, not reacting, and accepting that you don't know is, I think, the key that I had, that worked for me in all of the 3 interviews. Right. Because I was asked questions which had no answers. Like, I still can't name 20 tire companies. I can go to 10, but not 20, right? So these were the questions. And then talking about my technical. So it was a lot, because it was a technical entry, and I'm a computer science graduate with a very good percentage. So he really checked me there.
अब यहाँ पे लोगों को रेफरेंस देना चाहूंगी कि नव्या जो है वो स्कूल से लेके कॉलेज तक शी इज वेरी गुड इन एक्सीलेंट इन एकेडमिक्स. तो यहाँ पे आपको थोड़ा कॉन्टेक्स्ट पता चलना चाहिए. यू कैन प्रोबेबली थिंक कि 3 बार रिकमेंड हुई है, बट प्लीज टेल योर टेक्निकल क्वेश्चंस टू देम.
Okay, so since I'm a computer science graduate, I was asked about, IPv4 address and how many addresses can be formed, and about the octets, about bits and bytes, and everything that can be, what are the threats to the internet through the internet that we get? What about data security? And I just like everything, things that not even were asked in my BTech exams was something that he asked me.
Okay.
And I think they're not making up answers, but actually logically thinking in that stressful situation is required. And I did that. I mean, to certain extent, I tried doing that, and then he understood that, he is like asking such difficult questions to me. Then this is like the first interview I'm talking about. So he asked me, do you know about G7? And I said, not really. So I told him I know about G20. He asked me about G20. The next question was, do you know about G7? Like, are you aware about it? I said, I am aware, but not really. I haven't read about it since a long time. And then the next question was, why is G7 called G7 and not G8? And I was like, I just said no. And he asked me the question on that.
Okay.
And then there were tricky questions on, how will you calculate the diameter of the park that you run in? And the answer was in roots. So I told him the answer was in root and then fraction. And then he said, what is this? How can you do this? Can't you tell me in decimals? You're very slow. How come you have such good marks? So he just tried to build that pressure a lot. And then I think I tried, and I was actually genuinely trying to find answers. So I think that worked in favor for me. Yeah. And in my second attempt, the interview lasted for like above 2 hours. So I was like, what is this going on? Like, I have always heard that, people who are already recommended do not face generally a very tough interview. But I was. And I was asked such questions which do not have answers. Like, why is the mud brown? Why is the light from the tube light white, and why is the light emitted from a bulb yellow? And why is the Arabian Sea called Sea and Bay of Bengal called Bay? And I just don't know how how tricky questions these were. And then he suddenly started asking about where is Swiss Canal. So you're not in that zone. You're thinking about logical questions, and then he moves on to geography, and then he moved on to defense knowledge. He's asking me about naval utility aircraft. So there was no one pattern that he was following. Then he's asking me about clubbing, about friends. It was just too much. It was just too much of stress in that 2 hours. But I think I was very cheerful. I was fine. I knew that he was just checking me, and I kept, I did not go sad, or I was not reacting in a negative way. I was fine with it. I was laughing also with him when he said. So I think that way he could see that I'm fine. I'm not getting stressed.
Right.
And then towards the end of it, after 2 hours, he's saying that I could have taken 2 interviews. I've given so much of time to you. And I was like, is this also my fault? How is this my fault? So he was like, he was just taking out all of his frustration on me. And but I got recommended, so I deal with it.
Okay. So coming to the GTO portion, because I really enjoyed your interview one. क्योंकि questions तो पूछते रहते हैं, but the way you answer is really important, and you handle it so well. I would just say that. So Navya, when it comes to GTO यहाँ पे हमारी collectively group activities को monitor किया जाता है. How you're with your group, how you're your behavior, your actions, everything is being noticed. So how was your overall GTO performance when it comes to like task?
Okay, so I believe the strongest part is GTO. Like for me, the strongest part is GTO, and I would give all of the credit. Like I would not keep any for me, but give all of it to Vikas sir. And so he is like the god for GTO, and I've learned everything from him. Like he has had mock sessions for us, mock group discussions, mock PGTs, command tasks. So I believe he was somebody who helped me gain confidence in GTO. And I believe for women candidates, it's a little tricky since all of it are outdoor tasks. So generally, women candidates do face a little problem there in individual obstacles, or be it the tasks with fatta, balli, and rope. So I believe he was somebody who actually introduced me and then guided me throughout the process. And also I believe that whatever were the curricular activities, like extracurricular activities I was involved in. So I was like a state player for volleyball. I was involved in debating. I was involved in social projects. So I believe all of it, helped me be a better team player, and that showed in the GTO there. So that was something for GTO. Also, there's this one thing that I would like to highlight for everyone. We do have this misconception that how many individual obstacles that we are doing. So for Army and Navy, there are 10 obstacles, and the total marks is 55, right? So everybody, after doing their obstacles, we do start calculating as to which number of obstacle we did and how much marks will we be getting for it. But in my last attempt, so the GTO, like after all of the tasks were done, he came and sat with us, had like a very friendly discussion with us, and a girl asked him that, so how many should we do to clear the GTO task? So he was like, how can you say, how do you know that I was marking you on how many you did? But actually, like, he told us that he was marking us on how we did them. Like, he was judging us to, we weren't injury prone. Like, it was not that we were daring enough and then we like fell. So he was looking at, how sensibly we were doing it, how courageously we were doing it, if we are not, frightened of it or not. So I think, so when he said it, I think it cleared a lot of things in my mind, that it doesn't depend on how many you do, but how you do it.
Right. It makes sense,
So
actually.
that was a very big learning.
Right. Navya, the thing you said is very important. It really matters how you do it rather than how much you're doing. Because in especially girls, the stamina is not up to the, as we compare to male candidates who go for SSB.
Right.
So it is always in their head that, how I'm going to do the 10 obstacles, how it is going to be like that. And we start comparing also. So after your SSB journey, you got your first recommendation from 19 SSB Allahabad. And I'm very curious to know that what was your family reaction when they got to know कि आपको recommendation हो गया है?
Okay. So, like towards the end of the SSB, I was kind of, very kind of sure that I'll get recommended. Because I remember this instance when, there's an addressing speech by either the president or the deputy president of the board, when they say that, sometimes you're not made for it. Sometimes, there are better things awaiting you, and they give this very motivational speech as to, people don't feel down after the result. And I don't know how I just was not listening to it. I was just thinking about how sir, like how Vikas sir and how my parents will react when I tell them I get recommended. I was not even listening to the speech. I listened to that one example of APJ Abdul Kalam that they give, that he did not clear it, but then he became the supreme commander. So I just listened to that one example, and then I did not hear the entire speech, and I was just thinking that, okay, when I get recommended, I'll call them, and what will be their reaction. So the first call that I made was actually not to my mother; it was to Vikas sir, because I think he was the one who actually, was very excited to listen to what the result was. And I called him and I said that, I got recommended, and I was not, like, I was not crying. I was fine. I was emotional, and then he said, I knew it. And then I was like, that was the reason of my confidence throughout the SSB.
Right.
And so the main happened when I called my mother, and then she said this whole line that, "Are you serious? You got recommended for the Indian Army? Like, we come from a civilian background where we do not hear about the army." So then her daughter got recommended for it, and she was over the moon. And then when she said it, I started crying. So that was it. And also,
if I compare Navya, your first recommendation to the third recommendation, तो तीसरी बारी में back to back you are getting recommendation, तो वहाँ पे क्या reaction रहा?
So वहाँ पे I was focused on कि ठीक है, getting recommended and all, करना है. And then I called and my father picked up the phone, and then he said, hat trick हो गई. And then I realized कि, oh yeah. So I think they were more, and I just don't know, they were just so used to कि ठीक है, अभी call आएगा और बोल देगी recommended. तो ही तो उस टाइम कोई क्राइंग व्राइंग नहीं था. लास्ट टाइम जो थर्ड टाइम था, इट वाज वेरी जॉयफुल, वेरी प्राउड एक्चुअली, कि वी न्यू यू विल डू इट. तो पहले टाइम पे सिर्फ सर कह रहे थे कि आई न्यू इट, बट लास्ट टाइम मतलब जब मैं थर्ड बार रिकमेंड हुई, तो आई थिंक द होल फैमिली सेड वी न्यू इट. And
Look at
it
the
just gave
belief.
me so much relief that they do believe in me.
Right. So नव्या, जनरली इट इज बीइंग ऑब्जर्व्ड कि बहुत कम लोग रिकमेंड हो पाते हैं और बहुत सारे लोगों को फेलियर या आई मीन ईदर दे गेट स्क्रीन्ड आउट और दे गॉट कॉन्फ्रेंस आउट, तो दे आर फेसिंग फेलियर्स, राइट? सो व्हाट डू यू थिंक कि रीजन क्या है कि बहुत सारे कैंडिडेट्स रिकमेंड नहीं हो पाते हैं ईदर दे इन द स्क्रीनिंग प्रोसेस एंड ऑल्सो कंसिडरिंग द कॉन्फ्रेंस पार्ट ऑल्सो, बिकॉज वहां पे भी कहीं ना कहीं कुछ ना कुछ हम जर्नल मिस्टेक कर देते हैं, इसलिए बहुत सारे बच्चे बल्क में निकल जाते हैं.
Right. So, yes, and talking about technical entries, like all of the three entries that I was a part of, they were technical entries, and usme recommendation rate is very low. So,
Right.
like out of 32, two got recommended, and I was one of them. So, I believe 32 में से two is like very low recommendation rate,
Right.
right? So, I believe that, some of the common mistakes that I avoided and I've seen people do who got, conference out or screen out, I believe was firstly, they were not aware, like actually aware about themselves and what they wrote in the PIQ. Like I was asked this question as to what is the name of my best friend's mother and what is her profession. So when we actually don't know and when we say that she is my best friend, then we actually need to know as to everything about her also. So I was asked this, and then I was like, I was prepared for it though, but I was not expecting such detailed questions in the interview.
Right.
Also, I believe second mistake that we do, that we try making up answers, and lie is something which is not acceptable.
Makes sense.
So I've seen people who have given made up answers in the interview, and I think that that could be the reason for the rejection, because it is acceptable to not know answers and accept it and say that, okay, sorry sir, I should have known this, yeah, I can't recall this, I will work on it. But lying is not an option.
Right.
So I think that needs to be avoided, like at all costs. Thirdly, would be to be present. And I know it's been said a lot of times. Everybody says it, that you should not let the performance of your previous task affect the performance of your next task.
Right.
And I believe it is very hard to implement when you're actually facing downfall during a particular task. So in my third attempt, I could not, perform individual obstacle up to my potential, and I did touch the red part in one of the obstacle. So I was feeling very low at that point, that I could have done more if I had more time and everything, but I did not let it affect my command task, and I think that way I balanced out the individual obstacle as well.
Right.
So I believe that being very present and planning as to what the next step should be, that will be in your favor. To think very intelligently in the moment, I believe that is required when you are there appearing for SSB.
Right.
So
Navya,
that
when
would be
the reasons you have sent are very much on the point, and when failure happens, we start comparing ourselves with the people who got recommendation or they got screened in, and because of that, कई बार हम अगर screen out हो रहे तो हम वहां पे demotivation factor आ जाता है, या हम back to back SSB जा रहे हैं तो भी एक demotivation factor आ जाता है. So there are a lot of people who start giving up hope. So what will be your message to the people who are preparing damn hard for their SSB? But couldn't make it till now, but I'm surely they will make it in the future.
right. So relating this to my with my friends, we started preparing together, but some of them could not make it, right? They did get screen out, they did get conference out, and I believe that it's never about that you're not capable enough. It is always as to are you in that zone, are you performing to their potential, to the potential they see in you at the moment. Like those 5 days could not judge as to what kind of a person someone is. But if they see you, that if you put so much of effort, and if you put in the right amount of effort and the right amount of the words that you speak, I believe it plays in your favor. So I believe it is nothing like कि किसी में पोटेंशियल नहीं है या कैपेबिलिटी नहीं है. आई बिलीव कि वहां पे जैसा आप परफॉर्म कर रहे हो, जो आप में वो देखना चाह रहे हैं, क्या आप उनको उस टाइम पे दिखा पा रहे हो अपनी क्वालिटीज, अपनी स्ट्रेंथ्स, क्या अपनी वीकनेसेस को कवर कर पा रहे हो, क्या अपनी वीकनेसेस पे वर्क कर पा रहे हो उनके सामने, आई बिलीव दैट डिफाइंस कि यू गेट रिकमेंडेड और नॉट. ऑल्सो I I just related so much with ki since I'm a computer science graduate, I did get through so many job interviews, but at the end could not make it. And I know what it feels like to be on that fifth day and to be very hopeful ki you are getting it, but not getting it right. So I believe that when it's right, it's right. It is the moment. It has to be the moment in which you get recommended, right? I was I was not dreaming. I have seen people who have been dreaming for the same. They have given so many attempts and still not getting recommended. So I see the potential in them. I see the dedication because I know how disheartening can it be to go there, invest so much time and effort into something and then not get recommended. But I went there for the first time and I did get recommended. So I believe that time there and then I got the value कि यार इतने लोगों को छोड़ के if I am somebody, then I need to be like that and be working on my skills further also.
Right.
So that way I believe dealing with failures and accepting कि ठीक है नहीं हुआ, it's fine, move on. Learn more. See कि जो recommend हुए हैं उनमें क्या qualities हैं, कैसे वो अपने आप को handle कर रहे हैं. तो there was this one instance. I think the answer is getting very long, but one instance that I would like to highlight is कि LWS में I had so like one previous batch, like a previous batch from me, there was this one girl who was, she was like revising her answers with me and we were preparing together. And then she had her SSB before me. So she went to the SSB and after 5 days, we got to know that she got recommended. And I just left my food and I was in the mess in the LWS campus. I was there, I was eating my lunch and I just could not finish it. And I straight away ran to Vikas sir and I said that, she got recommended. And he said, are you telling me or asking me? And I was like, sir, so is this a doable thing? Like, ho sakta hai? Is it possible? So he said, yes, it is possible and I know you'll do it.
Wow.
So I believe कि I saw somebody achieve it, right? So I think कि बहुत achievable लगता है when somebody you know, when somebody you see, वो काम करके आता है तो बहुत achievable लगती है वो चीज. And I believe कि मेरे सामने एक एग्जाम्पल आ गया तो वहां से बहुत रियल होने लग गई चीजें. And I was like कि okay, I can do this.
Right.
Doable चीज होती है ये. So I believe people who have not yet gotten recommended or not gotten screened in, I believe that there will be, even if we don't know, even if we can't find, there are shortcomings and we need to accept them and work on them.
Right.
That is the only way through, I think.
Navya, I can see that you're very confident and you have the potential, but one of the reason could be the faith of your mentors in you. I mean, that really boosted your performance. And I just wish you all the very best, Navya. Thank you so much for joining me for this interview. And I'll be looking for the pictures that you'll be sharing once you get, the uniform and then on the POP day. And it's a blessing to have you on the platform. I wish you all the very best. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching the video and let me know in the comment section below. If you have any doubts, follow for more such content. Jai Hind.